Hello and welcome to episode 113 of the Foundry Roundtable, the podcast exclusively covering the Foundry for Star Trek Online. I'm your tame Foundry author, Drogan1701. Back from winning a 24-hour sleeping contest is Markhawkman.
I cheated, sorry.
I don't know how you cheated a sleeping contest, but that's okay. Because our other co-host, of course, is licensed and certified drone hunter Greendragoon.
I have so far captured 0 drones.
Well, I didn't say you were any good.
Oh, well, that's good.
And our guest tonight, SirBoulevard. Welcome back.
It's great to be back, even if I'm from sickbay. I'm dead, Jim.
Well, that's okay, because we'll go with the Monty Python thing, and we'll say just he'll get better.
Or Magic Super Blood.
Magic Super Blood, perfect.
We'll inject you with some gamma irradiated blood.
Or, we'll just come up with some kind of technobabble explanation, or we'll just say that Q made you better, because as we all know, Trek fans will accept anything if Q did it. All right, not too much on the news front tonight, except that tomorrow, meaning Thursday, the 10th, we're going to get the finale of the Iconian War. We don't really know too much about it. It's called... What is it called?
Midnight. And all the people listening to the show on Monday, we are super jealous of you.
Because you will already know what happens. So, let's do some speculation. What do you guys think will happen?
I think the time weapon is going to be involved, but I don't think it'll get used in the way we typically think about it being used.
So what do you mean by that?
I think there's a plan B that will come out at the last minute.
So instead of using the, what would you call it? The
Well, you remember how one of the lore blog things they posted was talking about how Janeway had some idea she thought might possibly be useful as an alternative to the Crinum weapon? Not that we found out anything about what the idea was, just that she had an alternate plan.
Well, in the latest lore blog that came out a day or so ago, we had a scene with Vakel Shan where he was trying to find an alternative to what we assume is his referring to the use of the temporal weapon, but not being able to see a alternative. So, I mean, it could be building up that we may be forced into it seeming like the temporal weapon is our last course of action to try and use it again. And then at the 11th hour, some plan option B will pop out.
It's possible. It would seem like a shame to not use the device more than we have.
Yeah, I mean, just the amount of build-up that has gone into this so far, it has to figure in some way prominently.
Mm-hmm.
One thing I've been pondering is what would MacGyver do if he had a weapon like that at his disposal?
MacGyver didn't like guns.
Yeah, and if he did, he'd probably build it out of a paperclip and some tissue paper.
Well,
but what would
I'm
he do with it is the question.
Well, what I'm getting at is he has it. He in the TV show many times used handguns or pieces of handguns for a variety of purposes that had nothing to do with the function they were intended to be used for, such as using the finger guard on a handgun for an improvised wrench.
So how could we use the time ship in a, the temporal weapon in a unconventional manner? I don't know, my unconventionality.
Well, the thought that I've been pondering is that maybe you, used it to, I guess you could say it's a way of disorienting the Iconians, and but basically just have it do that whole like sideways time thing, and in an area just to see what would happen to the Iconians if they were subjected to being pushed out of phase with the rest of the time continuum.
Pax says use it to put something back in the timeline.
I don't know if the gun can work like that.
I don't know either. Or,
I mean,
make alterations to it, change how it functions in order to make it do something else.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely... I can't believe that the Iconians can't time travel plot point isn't going to factor in some big way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They said that numerous times, so here's the other part, is that there's been several interviews with Salami Inferno come up lately, and he says something several times, which is that in Season 11, time travel is going to be essentially available to everybody. And he says time travel. Now, what this temporal weapon does is not time travel. It's, it
Time
takes things out of timeline manipulation. So what if we alter the vessel in some way in order to then be able to time travel at will?
Ooh! That's actually an interesting idea. What if they change the device so that it can temporarily time travel like objects, like throwing the Iconians into the past so they forget about the present, causing a kind of a loop for them, or dragging Iconia into the present, or something
like that.
Yeah.
If we restore their homeworld for us, maybe they won't hate us anymore.
It definitely throws up a lot of...
But it's also, I think, going to be something that doesn't erase the war, because if we think back to that trailer, it talks about all the casualties that we suffered, so that's still going to have happened.
Yeah. Which definitely kind of leads back to me thinking the weapon is going to be used in an atypical way.
Yeah. I think you might be right about that.
So the other big thread, or plot thread, that we've got hanging is the Other.
Yes.
So
the Other who saved the Iconians, or at least some of them, from extinction, really, and helped them get back to a position of power. Who is he, or she, or it?
I've actually heard two really good theories. And those theories are the Other is either you or Sean.
Definitely be interesting if the player turns out to be the Other.
Mm-hmm. Pax says it could be Future Guy.
Although, let me point out one thing, is the Iconians know who the Other is. And you've faced in person against one or two of them. So the Iconians have seen you and not recognized you as the Other.
Maybe you're not the Other yet.
But they already know who the Other is.
Well, they know a version of the Other. If it's your future self, you could be different in some way, where they don't recognize you.
Yeah, there's all sorts of weird things involving time travel and not being yourself. Um,
I'm just thinking back to Babylon 5, where the Sinclair goes back in time and becomes, this hugely historic religious figure in Minbari culture. But of course, when he when he's born and when the Minbari of the quote present time come into contact with him, the rank and file don't know that he's who that's going to be.
Yeah, none of them actually knew what Balin looks like.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Obviously, some of them will.
They knew him by name and by reputation and by several artifacts that he had created during his lifetime and left behind to be used by the Minbari people. But none of them knew what he looked like. Also, if you take a very, very close look at the Triluminaries, they have pieces of Sinclair's Babylon 5 communicator embedded in them.
Mm-hmm. So I think, if you are destined to be the other in some future thing, it could be some sort of alteration to you so that they wouldn't recognize you.
Yeah. I mean, it'd be easier if they had, or it was such a case where Iconians didn't live forever, and so we could just simply say it was a different generation of Iconians. But it looks, I mean, from everything we've seen, they're immortal. So the same Iconians we're dealing with now are the same ones that are around back then.
So yeah, there's definitely some holes in that theory, but it's an interesting one.
One of the more interesting ideas I've been pondering is the suggestion that some people had that maybe the Iconians and the other, or maybe the other is the time traveler. And maybe it's entirely possible that the Iconians, don't actually know who the other is.
You mean the traveler from the TNG?
Maybe.
I don't know. I mean,
so we never found out much about him, did we?
No.
It could be any number of.
It's wide open right now.
Yeah.
I mean, all we really know about the Traveler is that the Traveler has the physical ability to step outside three-dimensional space and time.
Here's a thought, just to add fuel to the fire. What if you are the other, but the Iconians don't remember you because of their chronoton-based brains?
Dang timey-wiminess.
I'm just throwing it out there. I mean, they could leave notes for themselves, say, this person came and helped us, but they may not necessarily actually remember you because of your time travel.
Very strange.
Interesting.
I mean, I don't know how to make that work in a plot, but that's kind of the big question out there is we've got this thread about them not being able to time travel, but we really don't know the rules of this aspect of them.
Well, I think we will find out tomorrow.
Well, that's one thing about time travel in fiction that I've noticed a lot is that the rules of time travel are whatever the scriptwriter wants them to be.
Very true. But as I was telling you guys before, one of the things I want to do in the future is an episode on time travel, and that's definitely one of the things that we'll be getting into is rules and bending and breaking of said rules. But for now, why don't we move it along to what we've been working on, and we'll have our guest go first because SirBoulevard, you have a new mission, I believe.
Yeah, I do. So basically, my mission is going to be kind of like a tie-in cross series, tying between the Iconian War anthology and something me and Sutherland have been working on, which is an anthology about the Askar Civil War.
Whoa.
All right, I think Skype has been acting up a little tonight.
Yeah.
So, tell us about kind of the plot lines of this tie-in.
Well, basically, it's a Federation-only mission, and it starts with the events of following on my previous mission, Common Ground, but it's also kind of been a build-up with what Sutherland has been doing, with the Molrihan series. So
yeah, which we played some of.
Mm-hmm. And he's got one more coming out, which takes place prior to this one. I just had the time to get it done while I've been ill. So, what ended up happening is one of the Askar commanders, who's been like a recurring character, had gotten involved with one of the Romulan Republic commanders, who's also been a recurring character recently. And then after their government betrayed them, she had already left the Askar military to work on Molrihan so that there wasn't a conflict of interest. Well, a few days later, the Askar betray everyone, and, well, she's under arrest. So you end up having to work with her to try and track down the Askar commander from Common Ground, Atalanta. And you find out they're using some technology, and when we got more details about Season 11, right as I'm finishing this up, I went, oh, that dovetails nicely into what the Mirror Universe is doing, because the Askar are actually allied with the Mirror Universe.
It's interesting how the Askar have changed from sort of, nebulous allies as we go through Sutherland's missions to almost outright villains now.
Yeah, this is something I actually was working with him on, because I was mentioning, the Askar are, the individual Askar aren't bad people, but a lot of the government's actions have been really, bad and just horrible things, and I've called, I know it's pissed Sutherland off a few times in our discussions, me going, well, how do you expect people to react? They steal, they enslave, they do all these horrible things, and then they want to be our friends. It's no, they need a chance to kind of have a little bit of redemption to the players. And that was really where I was coming from with it when I approached him about, because originally this has ballooned far more than it wanted to be. Originally it was just going to be the Askar were just present at the Rubin conference. But then as I was getting more backstory into them, I was like, no, you know what? Why don't they be the villains? And so I worked it out with him, and we kind of agreed this is a really good way to give kind of the Askar kind of a reinvention, so that they're more palatable to individual players. Because as you once said, Drogan, I wish I could shoot them.
Well, just at the end of your last mission is when I wanted to shoot him.
One thought that I've often had about the Askar is that the Askar would be much easier to get along with if not for the fact that they often have goals that conflict with ours.
And that was a big thing,
But that makes them interesting, I think.
Yeah, it does. But I was coming from the perspective of they can have goals that are conflicting with ours, but they probably need to lose some of their sharper edges before we can try and really work with them.
But it would be an interesting storyline to, keep carrying this forward and eventually, if figure out why they're this way. And if you say, as you say, individual ones are not bad people. So figure out, where are the bad people in this society, and they're probably in the leadership. And then, figure out how to, in effect, help them with maybe a regime change or something at the very end.
And that's kind of why we're doing the Civil War thing, because if you get to the end of the mission, this Commander Peru is basically... one of the big things they've been also doing is they've been stealing the lockbox ships before anyone can salvage them. And, like, that was something else I worked with, was, like, partially because we had access to this model. She's going away in a stolen Vaudouard frigate to start this rebellion. And the thing is that they've been checking these lockbox ships, and like I did a really detailed backstory in the last 2 missions, like basically saying the reason they're in the lockbox is because of the advanced technologies. If everyone has equal access to them, it's going to throw the hell out of the balance of power in the region.
Well, one amusing thing I did in one of my older missions was to, since I was using a minor race that didn't actually have their own ships, just for the fun of it, I decided to let them use a Breen ship and a Jim Hadar ship. Not because they looked like anything that race had used in the show, just because it didn't have anything better. And it just amused me to use that costume import thing with an alien ship.
Yeah.
Luckily, we don't have to do that anymore.
Yeah, very good thing. But no, like, they were going out in a Vaudouard ship to basically recruit rebels, while the main like villain of this arc, Atalanta, has actually stolen an entirely intact Wells class, because the ones the players get have been already stripped by the Tholians and so forth of like their advanced technologies. No, she has one that's fully intact that she managed to take.
That gives quite an advantage.
Mm-hmm. And this was something Sutherland wanted to do, which was, and then Season 11 again tied into as well, as, okay, this temporal technologies around here, if they find out about the time ship, the Anoraks, they're going to be craving that thing. Like, power-hungry, insane people.
So, how is it working in a sort of a collaborative thing? You know, I've done it with a group of people. How is it doing it with one other person?
You know, I think because our stories are taking place at very different times, and what we've kind of done is, the last mission was an exception that I used Prue, which is a 4th Fleet member, but I'm usually writing the villains. I'm usually doing the 1st Fleet, which is Atalanta's, like, hardliner, filled with patsies group. Like, that's been something we've been very, like, consistent on. Like, different people are going to do different fleets. Like, most of the writing for the 4th Fleet comes down to Sutherland. What happened in the last mission was I was given the creative freedom, specifically so that we have to, as Sutherland put it, make me hate Atalanta so that I know where to write her. That was given a rare bit of freedom, but in this case, it's been mostly we're doing our own we've done our own independent arcs. I don't know how we're going to handle the war yet, mostly because, you know, I've been sick and haven't been able to, like, think that far ahead. We're also waiting to see how Midnight resolves the Iconian War too, because we got to know what world we're walking into, basically.
Oh yeah, and I've been doing that a little bit as well with the other missions that I've been wanting to do for the Iconian War, because I don't know because I don't know how the war is going to resolve itself, or if they're going to be using the sphere builders, as we suspect they might, from the character of Clouda from the previous mission. So it's a little bit wait and see at the moment, but obviously we don't have to wait too long.
Yeah, but that's basically where we are.
Wait and see till tomorrow. Okay, so
Doom PM.
I have Doom PM. I like that.
Soon at PM.
Oh, soon TM, not Doom. Soon.
Doom and Doom are
Well,
the
that
same
too.
thing.
Yeah.
All right. So I haven't been able to do much in the Foundry since our last show, other than doing a little bit of writing. I don't know. How about you, Dragoon?
Well, there was kind of this thing called Labor Day weekend that had me doing lots of things that were not involving a computer.
See, in theory, you get a 3-day weekend, you think, oh, yeah, I could do all kinds of stuff in the Foundry. It gets to the end of the 3-day weekend, it's like, oh, wow, I didn't do anything.
I did lots of great stuff.
I did all sorts of things I never imagined I was going to do. Now what am I going to do?
That said, I brought a little bit of a consolation. I brought a couple of screenshots from stuff that I have been working on in Part 3 lately.
We like screenshots.
So this is the first one. A colony at an undisclosed location I've been working on. I can tell you those colony
we'll have
buildings.
to wait for the delay until... There it goes. Very nice. Using the backdrop from Alpha, which is a fantastic backdrop.
Yeah. I want this to kind of... This is actually an asteroid base. We've got a couple of these asteroid bases that basically look like domes, are mounted onto the surface, and you kind of see a like a little colony inside. So this is the idea is that this is actually built on the Hobus map. So it's got that little hex field
Nice.
dome above it. And then I have it's in orbit around this ice gas giant.
Very cool looking.
This is kind of the first attempt at it. Having played around with it some and started to figure out what the benefits and pitfalls are, I'm probably going to redo it or do another start at it and lay things down a little more deliberately. In testing around with things, I've found it is a little dark on this map, this particular backdrop. So I was going to put down some of those lights. You can kind of see one of them in the background there.
Yeah, you can see it illuminating the colony building there.
I'm also not 100% sure I'm going to stick with the colony buildings. Those things are a pain to work with.
Because, of course, they are still invisible.
Yeah.
One thing I have learned about the colony building is that the building is not properly invisible.
Well, you can see the awnings.
Well, have you guys actually looked at the colony buildings?
Yes, and you can kind of orient them by looking at the shape of the awnings and like, okay, the awnings are there, therefore the building must be inside the void between the awnings.
That's kind of what I was doing.
So I've actually figured out part of the reason why they are invisible. Because I was actually digging through the building assets while I was working on the last mission, and I rumbled across the colony buildings. I'm like, oh yeah, these things don't work. And then I looked down in the 3D preview, and I realized they're invisible in the 3D preview. Meaning they probably weren't properly imported into the Foundry, and we probably need to bring that up with Zero.
Yeah, no, I mean, these are original assets, right? I mean, they were part of the
Yeah, they've always been there. And honestly, I couldn't tell you if they were always there.
They have.
Yeah. I mean, and there's also the fact that because of the awnings, they're a little bit tricky to line up and work with. Especially because I really want to do like a lot of narrow streets, kind of make it feel closed in. Like this is a colony that is at the breaking point and is packed in as tightly as possible.
Yeah, I actually did a considerable amount of work with those colony buildings when I made that mission, Diplomacy in the Gamma Quadrant, because the colony buildings are 90% of that thing that where you meet with the Vorta and Jim'Hadar on the surface of that weird dusty planet. So, I built most of that out of colony buildings, and the observations that I made about it are basically that you know exactly where the building is, you just can't see all of the edges of the building.
Yeah, and
if you could figure out where those are and place a little asset that down so that you know where the edge of the building is, then you can move all those together and just get rid of the asset at the end.
When I was working with those, part of what I did was I set up a bunch of ramps and catwalks and stuff so that you could run around on the roofs of the buildings, because several of the optional dialogues that I stuck onto that map required you to go up on the roof of a building and find a vorta that you wouldn't have seen from the ground. And yes, I went overboard on hidden stuff in that mission, but well, you know.
So yeah, I might try and swap it out for a different colony building. I liked these because they kind of had a ragged feel to them.
They do. They feel a little bit ramshackle and aged
and dusty.
But I mean, if I want to do the narrow, winding streets, thinking like old world European town style.
It's Nimbus 3 style. It's Paradise City, just not on that planet.
It doesn't look like Nimbus 3. It doesn't have enough bullet holes to look like Nimbus 3.
That's what we need, some bullet hole decals.
So the other image I brought was one I posted on Twitter a while back. And this is an ice field I've been working on. You can actually see a little bit of at the end of part 2. This is where your ship takes refuge after failing to get through the wormhole before it closed at the end of part 2. I got a little nuts with the amount of ice.
A little?
Yeah, I think Zero accused me of grossly breaching the object limit, which I did not. There's only about 150 objects on this map right now.
Oh, only.
But I mean,
so do you get any performance slowdowns with it?
My desktop is fine, but I think my laptop was indicating that it might be a little bit too much. I might need to thin it out.
Screaming in pain?
It was stuttering a little.
And then caught fire.
But it was pretty.
Well, I would suggest having a couple people with PCs that are less than good test that for you. See what they say.
Well, if it makes my laptop go into thermal shutdown, you know there's a problem.
Yes. Mark would be a good candidate for that.
I'm pretty sure I'd need to do at least a little thinning out.
Yeah.
This is probably a little.
But it looks pretty awesome, though. I have to say.
Oh yeah, it looks great.
Well,
I actually have to wonder about that one old one that. Dang it! I forgot what his name was. Crap. There's this one guy who did this map where you were flying through tunnels in the middle of a giant asteroid.
That was Sutherland.
No, not Sutherland. Someone else. I want to say Alien du jour, but not him. It was.
There's been several of us who have done that. I actually have in a couple of unreleased missions. But I have seen that technique done before because you got the donut asteroid that can be easily used to make tunnels.
Well, I wish we could do fog in space. Then I could have it just use the fog to kind of imply the density. I want it to be thick enough that it you kind of feel like you don't know where you're going.
There are nebula assets that do look kind of white, and if you combine those with your ice objects, it would kind of blur the outlines of the pieces of ice.
There's also the heat wave effect that can do that too.
Yeah,
combined with the right backdrop.
Yeah,
and kind of help you sort of extend the ice field.
There's also that one weird Undine visual effect from Fluidic Space that It depending on how it's used, it may or may not make you question your sanity.
Well, the cool thing is that this actually particular map is, at least the area of the map that I'm currently in has a something baked into the map that causes the gas engine trails.
Mm.
So if I were to move the ship forward, it would actually have like bluish clouded engine trails coming off of the ship.
Do you remember which map?
I think I want to say it was like Bomari or something like that.
Mm.
Yeah, if I remember right, Bomari does have a bunch of baked-in ice things.
Well, yeah, I mean you can kind of see some of the asteroids dispersed in and amongst the ice, which is from the stock map. But so far,
There definitely can be some advantages from using those baked, or the pre-made maps, because they have some things baked in that we can't do on our own.
yeah, I originally tried using the Briar Patch map, and then throwing the Davidian effect on it, so everything turned blue. But
I can guess what happened with that. The Briar Patch doesn't turn blue. It turns the Davidian effect orange.
no, it turned blue. It just wasn't it was a very odd shade of blue, and I ended up not liking it because it just made all the lighting look really harsh, and um, just felt really weird. So I was kind of excited when I found this one that, well, it's not a map-wide effect. It's enough that I can have the player fly through some of it and still get that blue engine trail effect.
Well, obviously, we're all looking forward to part 3 in whatever decade it actually comes out.
Well, I'm setting myself a goal of having it out before next year's Star Trek Las Vegas.
Sounds good.
We all look forward to it.
Yes, we do. All right, Mark, have you been able to get any work done in the Foundry lately?
Well, I posted a link to something I made today just because someone asked about it on the forum. Because, well, we do have in the Foundry a mirror universe version of the Odyssey outfits. Why that is, I don't know, but it exists. Someone was asking about it, so I went and made a copy of the Linnea NPC from my New Year's mission, and dressed her up in the Mirror Universe Oddie outfit.
So it looks like the female version, anyway, looks like your standard Odyssey outfit, but bare midriff and zipper undone.
Yeah, that.
About typical for the Mirror Universe.
Quite. The other thing that I've done is plans for improving Otha Patrol because, well, the version I initially published was a prototype, I guess is the best way to put it. And I was trying to get some commentary on how to make it better. Oh, well. And I've come up with some ideas there.
Well, sometimes you have to throw it into the live environment before you get good ideas on how to improve it. All right. So, Mark, you also have a mission review, I believe.
Yes. Let's see here. My main notes. Okay. The title is Helping Hand by Velqua. This is something that I found because the person who wrote it posted a thread on the forum about it. The premise of the mission is that a Kobali vessel went through the Bejor wormhole to explore, ostensibly, and the Federation Admiralty needs someone to find out basically you're being sent to rescue them because the Federation Admiralty received a distress call from them. Well, so you go through and into the Gamma Quadrant, and you find where the distress call came from, and well, things get weird fast. Because the first thing that happens is you run into the True Way in the Gamma Quadrant. Not the Dominion, the True Way. Apparently the True Way had secretly built a base at this location because they were trying to secure a supply of protomatter. And they built a base on this planet to... well, it's not entirely clear exactly because you never find the protomatter or any notes on where it came from or what the True Way was planning on doing with it, just that the True Way at one point in time had protomatter stored at this facility. I kind of got ahead of myself there. Anyway, you run into the True Way, have several of their ships in orbit attacking the Kobali ship that was lost. Well, you rescue the Kobali and keep the True Way from blowing up their ship. Then you find out that the Kobali ship had actually sent a distress call 6 days ago. You never find out why. That's one plot point that the author never actually went into detail on and explained. Because, I mean, you know, the distress call apparently went through the wormhole before it was received, but no one in the mission attempts to explain why the distress call was received 6 days late. Not sure is all that important, but, and of course you could always chalk it up to the wormhole aliens doing weird things because they feel like it. Either way though, so you go around, you beam down to the planet because there's a Kobali away team on the planet that needs to be rescued, and then the Kobali you find out that they got attacked by something, and they, well, got separated, and they're not entirely certain what attacked them because it wasn't something that they were familiar with. Which, you know, being that this is the Gamma Quadrant, that sounds rather common because they're not from the Gamma Quadrant. They don't know much about the Gamma Quadrant. But, okay, so you go around and you find several different things that are very strange on the planet. Some of which the author doesn't actually explain, because one of them is this building that's halfway submerged in a lake, and it looks the same as the building style that was being used by the True Way, but other than a mention of tectonic activity, there's no real explanation for why that particular building is sunk in the lake. Let's see here. What was the other thing? Okay. Then is when the mission starts to get really weird. You go around looking for the cache of protomatter that the True Way had on the planet, but you never find it. Why? We don't really know. That's one thing we never find out. Instead, we find salt vampires. Have to kill a bunch of salt vampires, and after you kill the salt vampires, you find this thing that apparently turned the people living in the colony, and by people living in the colony, apparently True Way, into salt vampires. Who created this and why? Well, apparently it's what are those things called again? Trumi's Elachi technology. Yeah, the Elachi have never been seen associated with salt vampires, and there's no real explanation in the mission for why the Elachi would want to make people into salt vampires, because unless, of course, it's one of those weird things where the Elachi have some special connection to salt vampires we don't know about. They did kind of hint in the Romulan, that one Romulan mission, that the Tal Shiar had come up with some maniacal scheme for using salt vampires as a bioweapon. Of course, we don't know precisely how or why. So it's possible that another Iconian servitor race might have an interest in them, but, well, Pax, the real question is not why the salt vampires were in the Gamma Quadrant. The real question is why the Elachi were in the Gamma Quadrant, because the Elachi launched a weapon from orbit to the planet that emitted this weird fog that turned people into salt vampires. And by people, I mean Cardassians and Jem'Hadar. Doesn't explain why, but apparently it was something that the Elachi felt was easier than beaming down and killing everyone the hard way. Anyways, what does this mean? This means that before you end the mission, you have to beam up to your ship and fight an Elachi fleet. That was kind of interesting because they had put in 3 groups that were relatively close together, so I ended up having to fight 2 of them simultaneously. Given that my ship was equipped with Aegis, that really wasn't much of an issue. Although that whole Elachi bleed-through thing, that gets annoying fast when your ship is set up primarily for shield tanking. Whatever. Anyways, the actual general concept of the mission was somewhat confusing because you have the 3 plot threads, one of which was the Kobali. You have the True Way plot thread, and then you have the Elachi plot thread. None of the 3 actually make sense to be in the Gamma Quadrant, so you need to explain that in the story. And, well, the Kobali were explained as exploring. The True Way, well, that wasn't explained, but you could, I suppose you could say, rationalize it as they got kicked out of the Alpha Quadrant and they went through the wormhole looking for some place to hide. But I don't think that the True Way would want to be anywhere within 20 parsecs of the Dominion. And this particular location was apparently relatively close to Dominion space, and I just can't visualize them going through the wormhole to get closer to the Dominion just to hide. So, headcanon thingy, next logical step to me is to conclude that the source of protomatter that they had collected was somewhere near this star system, and that this was just a temporary base of operations while they collected protomatter. The Elachi, that's the big unknown here, is that there is nothing in the story to indicate why the Elachi are there. I mean, because the Elachi have never been seen anywhere near the Gamma Quadrant in the game, and didn't really explain their presence there anyways, because the story elements involving the Elachi seem to suggest that the Elachi fleet just happens to fly to the planet.
It sounds to me like maybe
Anyway,
the
though,
author kind of fell into that trap sometimes of trying to put too much in rather than focusing and narrowing down on one particular plot thread.
Well, to me, it came across as though it was trying to do plot twists and ended up doing plot detours instead.
Yeah, and that can happen. Where, you know, because your plot twists still have to make sense in some way, and as you say, the appearance of the Elachi, it doesn't seem to make sense.
Honestly, what would have actually made a lot of sense is to replace the Elachi with Fekleri. That would have made the story make a lot more sense. Now that I think about it, I should go on the forum and mention that in the thread. It didn't mention that.
Well, it could be a helpful suggestion to the author that maybe that would be a better species to put in there. But it does bring up an interesting point of, you know, the relationship between the True Way and the actual Dominion, and what that might be like.
Well, that is actually touched on in the game on a few occasions. They don't really spend a lot of time talking about it, but the Dominion does make a definitive statement that they consider the True Way a bunch of criminals, and that they don't care what the Alliance does with them. It's like, oh, you want to arrest them and lock them up in prison for being criminals? Enjoy.
Oh, I should point out that...
Go ahead.
As you say, I should point out that the Dominion that you fight during the old Cardassian arc is the remnants of the Alpha Quadrant Jem'Hadar.
Yes.
That were hypothetically left behind after the Dominion War. Along with one rogue changeling. So that isn't the Dominion that the True Way allies with. It's just a fragment of left behind Jem'Hadar.
Oh, yeah.
Well, the True Way in the game does not and never did represent the actual Dominion. It's just a bunch of rogue elements that were left over from the Dominion fleet after the Cardassian War. And, of course, you know, bits and pieces of the Cardassian military that didn't like the direction that the Cardassians were taking after the war.
And it's a funny thing. My brother and I have been recently watching our way through Deep Space Nine, and the True Way is actually a reference from a radical Cardassian group in the show, which at the time was opposed to the treaty between the Cardassians and Bajor. So it's not something that Star Trek Online just made up out of the blue. It is a reference to something.
And of course, you know, as we were talking with on a recent show with Pax Federatica about, is that you know, the Dominion of 2409 or 2410 isn't exactly like the Dominion of the DS9 era because of Odo's influence. This is the actual Dominion in the Gamma Quadrant. So, you know, they would not be inclined, you know, the old Dominion would be inclined to ally themselves with the True Way. The new Dominion would not, probably.
Yeah, it's kind of a tricky thing because we see so very little of the actual Dominion in the game.
Yeah.
It's just our few interactions with during the 2800, and I think technically the Rapier mission also is part of the Dominion that tries to take the Rapier and
that is the only mission in the game where you have the actual proper Dominion as an enemy. And even then, it's like a minor skirmish.
Of course, that might be coming out soon, because we do know that the Cardassian arc is getting revamped.
Yes, finally the
in
last
season 11.
piece.
And,
last piece of launch content.
And we just got the notification that it's only going to be 4 episodes, so lots of cutting.
Lots of cutting.
Yeah, having just played through it on 2 episodes, it is so long.
It is long.
It's so mind-numbingly long. So 4 episodes doesn't sound nearly as bad as think.
I think it's almost like 8 or 10 now, isn't it?
Oh,
And
wait,
I don't think they're going to touch the 2800 part of it.
Of course not. It's a featured episode series.
Yeah.
Why would they do that?
No.
Okay, so Cardassian Struggle, Venture into Deep Space doesn't count because Venture into Deep Space is nothing more than you going to Deep Space Nine and saying hi to Curlit. Okay, Badlands, Suspect, War Games, Shutdown, that's 4. Rapier, 5. Forging Bonds, 6. Long Night, 7. Triple with Klingons. What the heck is that doing in the Cardassian War other than being
I think just because
in
it's set
Cardassian space?
in that area of the Alpha Quadrant.
It's also a sequel. It's also a sequel to what was a Klingon episode, because originally we had fought off with what's his name, Gerard, down there in the Klingon arc, but they excised that mission, and then the Triple with Klingons was the sequel to that, where we run into him again, which was build up for the Cure.
Okay, so there's 14 of them total.
Yeah, that's a lot.
And I can
most of them have to do with the True Way screwing around.
Yeah, there's a lot of
filler there that could be cut.
there's a lot of filler in there.
Missions like Seeds of Dissent, you could take the plot of that and condense it into something you read on a data pad in another episode.
Yeah, because I mean,
But funny you should mention Seeds of Dissent, because one of the entries to the last Foundry contest was a sequel to Seeds of Dissent. Kind of be a shame if it went the way of the dinosaur, but as we know,
wouldn't be the first time it's happened.
Yeah, it wouldn't be the first time, and there are options that you can do to.
Well, I mean, because I've played Seeds of Dissent a few times, and it's just one of those missions where you go down, shoot people, go into a cave, shoot more people, and now you save the colony from the True Way.
Yeah, but you have a lot of missions on the True Way part that are like that. Go into the Badlands, do a little bit of
the Badlands one was actually kind of interesting because, it's about looking for True Way bases, because at that point in the game storyline, you don't actually know where the True Way live.
Yeah, I remember that being like one of the longest ground maps in the entire game. That winding through that base.
Also, it's I think the only mission in the game that actually uses those tricobalt mortar props. Do not, under any circumstances, let one of those hit you.
However, I will say I'm pretty sure that I don't think Badlands will get cut. I think that they'll keep that because it is kind of like a big setup episode. But I think the mission that absolutely will not be cut is Rapier, because that's our introduction to Aeron, and Aeron refers back to that in the 2800.
Yeah, well, see, it's entirely possible that Rapier will get fused with one of the other missions.
I don't know. I have a hard time seeing Rapier making the cut because it's a standalone mission. It doesn't tie into either the True Way or the...
Well, Rapier is the only mission in the game where we actually see the proper Dominion outside. Actually, you know what? Talking to Aeron when you go to that system in the Gamma Quadrant is the only other time you actually see a proper representative of the Dominion in the entire game, other than Rapier.
All right,
what
so
you
here's
might see is they might remove that reference from Operation Gamma or whenever he talks about it.
Here's the thing, though. It's not just Operation Gamma. It's every time you talk to Aeron, it comes back to the fact, oh yeah, and you got Aeron killed, and he's bitter about it.
We didn't actually kill him. We took him prisoner.
Yes, but they had to issue a new one, and the new one thinks his old version is dead and is bitter about it. So, like,
It's also possible that the old Aeron used that suicide implant thingy.
mm-hmm. So no matter how you put it, like, you can't remove it without screwing up the 2800.
But they
Because
might fold it into another mission.
Yes.
As Loris puts it, Aeron is sulking.
Well, the tricky part is that there is actually two different plots. There's two plot lines in the Cardassian arc. There's the True Way one and the Mirror Universe one. Now, what they could do is they could just cut the Mirror Universe one entirely, and then just maybe reintroduce it later as stuff for the new Mirror Universe content
possible.
they're doing. Or they could try and split it, where they do 2 episodes relating to the Mirror Universe and 2 episodes relating to the True Way. But that's very short turnaround for either arc. I don't know. I mean,
yeah. There's a lot of ways we can go with it, and we will see in about a month.
I mean,
so let's move on to some discussion topics. Since we went out on a tangent there, one of the things that I was wanting to talk about tonight is lore blogs, because we've been getting a ton of them through the Iconian War, and I was reading these and seeing the reaction to these, and there's some people who don't like the fact that they might be taking the place of content in game, but beyond that, the blogs themselves people seem to like and enjoy reading. So I thought to myself, why not Foundry authors? Foundry authors could do that sort of thing.
I'm gonna kind of give the first retort to that, which is,
go for it.
Okay, part of the reason why I even made my Iconian War story arc was that it started off with just a big battle. And then I ended up having to write it around why we weren't present for any more of them after the first mission, really. Because I think, there's, as much as I really get on the haters' cases, I can't disagree with them to a degree. This war has been too heavy in the blogs. Like, we hear, oh yeah, these plants are being taken out left and right, and then we don't see it. The first good rule of writing is show, don't tell. And especially in an interactive medium, show it. This latest one with Sean, they're talking about, how his world map is going grayer and grayer as it marks where the heralds are taking over places of space. I figure that may not be possible to do with the galaxy map, that they would have to update it every single time, and I don't see Taco having the time to do that. But it does beg the question of, where has the war been? We haven't been at the fall of a major Federation world, at the fall of a major Romulan world, the fall of a major Klingon world. Yes, there's a PvE at Kronos. This upcoming mission is they're pretty much putting out there is going to be an attack on Earth. But where has it been up until this point? Blogs are good up until the point that you are doing all of your lore. Everything that people have been looking forward to are in the blogs and not in the game. And that's what happened this time.
So I would say, and I agree with you to a certain extent. So I would say, use the blog. If you're going to do a lore blog for a Foundry mission, use it judiciously. Don't use it in place of anything you should show. Use it to shed light on something, to give background on something that doesn't necessarily need to be in the mission itself in order for the player to have a good experience in the mission.
And that's the thing, like, I felt that if we could, instead of having like this whole, we're doing this random infiltration stuff that we had at the early war, if we had just a couple of big battles there, and then these lore blogs were on the side, and then we went into the Krenim stuff, I think it would have been different. I think, in particular, Delta Flight and House Peg took the war in the wrong turn. It took us away from being on the front lines, fighting tooth and nail, and losing planets. Because, what's the other complaint? That, oh, we've been forced into these losses through cutscenes and competence. Well, why not just have, the situation of there are so many forces coming in and we cannot take them? Instead, the blogs would have worked better if they had been, okay, here's what the other characters are doing while you're fighting these battles.
I know. I mean, the show has kind of lately been putting into aggressively releasing these episodic missions. So I wonder if it's been kind of that they have been trading off the ability to do better battle, better ways to express battles, such as like battle zones and encounters, in favor of these episode missions.
Here's the thing. I think ultimately, I don't think anyone has a problem with having a regular episodic release. We've needed that for a while.
Yeah.
The game has needed that. The issue has been where they focused the episodic content was what no one wanted. Nobody wanted to go on an infiltration mission at Dynasia. Nobody wanted to go fly with Tom Paris through an asteroid field with him making shout-outs to movies. We've been building up to this. Where was the war?
Well, we got that when we got to see Kagrin demonstrate why people think Klingons are morons.
Yes, I will say that, I think Broken Circle is one of the better missions in this arc. The thing is that they keep talking about these planets are falling. Which planets? No planet has fallen. I can still go to all these planets. Which planets have fallen?
Well, I mean, it might be a case where they're trying to hit certain points in the story, but those points are not coinciding with showing the fall of this system or that system.
To which I have to respond, you've built up to that and then you switched it out, in which case I have to point the finger and go, what made you guys choose this? Because that's not what you built up to. If you're marketing something as a war, people are going to expect a war. Give them a war.
Yeah, but you've already got people complaining about the forced feeling of losing battles.
Well, one thing that I find that does lend nicely to the whole this is a war and we need to fight for every inch of it. Brotherhood of the Sword. That definitely feels like a real war sort of thing.
It's also a PvE queue, and it's something that people will do over and over again. It would be nice, take
and from a plot standpoint, though, that particular mission actually makes sense as something that you would have to do more than once.
Yes. The thing I'm making is take the mission in the Calbrighton system. If we replace that with, say, there was an attack on a random Federation planet, it doesn't even have to be a major one like Vulcan or Andoria. It could be a minor one like I did with Kate or Beta Z or Trill, something of, it's a name that people will recognize. It's on the map. And there's just a sense of, okay, a major world has fallen. It's just one more mission of that, and then saying, we need to pull you off to go do something else.
The other suggestion that I saw that is something that I think I would have done is, all these red alerts that we have going on that you can play out in the game, change them to be Iconian attacks. Random Iconian attacks.
Yeah, that really, really would have been awesome, as if they would add red alerts for the Herald.
And Duncan Idaho in the chat has just said they could have retooled and reskinned Undine Assault to work for the Iconian War, because that Undine Assault, you get one of four.
That is exactly
planets.
what you're talking about. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, good suggestions for the next Iconian War.
Mm-hmm. However, we have wandered away from my original topic, which is lore blogs, and could you and should you do them for Foundry missions?
You know what? Well, I think that we didn't wander away from topic. I think this is all necessary to get to the point I really want to make, which is lore blogs are good, but they need to be, what are the stuff you wouldn't have had a chance to see because you were doing something else, or you're not this character, you're not in the position to do it. Mm-hmm. That's where a lore blog comes in handy.
Well,
we've talked about cutscenes real quick. As what do you do for a cutscene? It's things that the player might not be able to witness, because of course in the Foundry, the player has to witness everything.
Well, another thing that we've talked about in previous shows is when and why should you do a like one of those little, like a data terminal where you can like look up information about the characters in the story. Information that might be illuminating to the player to help them understand the story better, but is something that would clutter the story if you were to have the NPCs actually spend the time required to spell it out, I guess you could say.
Yeah, because pacing is important, and you don't want the player to feel bogged down when they're playing the mission. But if you have a little tag at the end of the mission that says, for more information on these characters, please see such and such on the forums. And I think you would have to, because we're prohibited by the EULA from linking to other websites. So I would just say, direct them how to find it and put it on the official forum somewhere.
Another thing is that, like doing the thing we like stick a computer terminal inside one of the maps on a Foundry mission. Just seen people do that several times, and usually it comes out pretty well. The only times it doesn't come out well are when, the person accidentally somehow sets up the computer terminal to be a one-time use thing where you can't go back and look at it again. But
yeah, I've done that as well, and it's great for optional stuff.
Well, what do you think about the idea of using lore blogs as a means of building hype for a mission?
Someone once did that. That was an insane marketing scheme, especially when you consider just how underwhelming the end result was.
Well, I was going to say, we've seen Cryptic do that really well for the build-up to Uneasy Allies, with, Sela being interrogated and then breaking out of jail. That was all done on a lore blog.
Yeah, that was a pretty good one. Mm-hmm. So the one I was talking about, though, was that one guy who... I don't remember the name that he used when he was posting on the forums, but it was actually a player doing it. And it was some sort of trick he was doing for like creating hype for a Foundry mission that he'd written. I just don't remember the name of it. The post made it sound like it was being posted by Amar Khan or whoever that guy was.
What, Amar Singh?
Yeah, Amar Singh, sorry. Yeah, that guy who was like that inmate at the facility thing.
Amar Singh was the scientist who was obsessed with eugenics. That you take prisoner in the Klingon arc. No, not recalling the guy, the actual augment guy that we were supposed to fight in the that one abandoned SDF.
Yeah.
But in any case, you definitely could use that as an intro to build anticipation for your Foundry mission, because we've seen who is it that does that on Twitter? Markets their mission very heavily and teases it.
At Stow Admiral Aaron.
Yeah, and seems like he's been very successful with that. And you could do that in a way with some blogs. I would say, keep them short. Have an ongoing thread in the Foundry forums, and start posting stuff. Start posting some little intros, things that people don't need to know, but are interesting and shed light on the mission that's going to eventually come?
I think in Stow Admiral Aaron's case, his Foundry missions are born out of his RP account.
Yeah. And, you know, we did some similar things in the run-up to the Purity series. We had a couple of videos that we put out that were like interviews and that sort of thing to try and build hype a little bit for that. But if you're going to try and build hype, make sure that you pay off. Make sure that you put out a good mission. So it lives up to it.
Yeah. Good mission always helps.
All right. So, Dragoon, if you want to get into the Foundry here for us for our next item, I've got a little challenge for us.
Okay.
This comes out of a thread posted on the forums by Starsword. He was wondering how to do something, and I should say his question was answered in that thread, but I decided that I wouldn't read the rest of it, so we could try and come up with a technique to do this ourselves. It may be the same technique they come up with in the thread. It may not. Mark has read the thread. He can tell us when we're done if that was what they came up with, but the rest of us are going into this cold.
Any
As
hint
soon
on
as
what the
Dragoon
subject
is ready. You'll need a ground map. I can tell you that. The question was, and let me pull up the ARC forums so I'm stating it correctly. So we're going to diffuse a riot. So we've got a scene where you've got civilians that are mobbing a location where your crew is unloading relief supplies. The Starsword says he's got one objective, which says diffuse the confrontation. And he wants to have a couple of choices about how to do it. And one is to have a couple of shuttles fly over and drop flash bombs, which will scare everybody off, but is not going to win you any friends. And the other one is to go find a local religious leader and have them go calm the crowd down. And I think this is one of those things where it's perfectly possible to do some either or objectives. You just can't put them in the objective menu.
Yeah.
So first we'll need some rioting civilians.
Okay, and I have a feeling
or
that
rioting anybody.
at the end of this, we'll actually have quite a few.
Now, I think what I would do just to save on NPCs might be just use some NPC groups, some friendly ones.
Oh yeah.
Which you're probably way ahead of me on.
Sorry, I'm running in advance. Here, this might help you guys.
You're running out of what? Ants?
I'm running in advance because you guys the delay in the last one.
Oh.
But now he's shared our has shared his screen with us, so we can see it better.
All right, so I just got to find some.
Well, we got lots of Kobali civilians. Could use that.
Yeah, there's a few
Damn
people
zombies.
through here that are in civilian clothing, but they're not. But there's a.
It's true. Of course, in the costume creator, we have a lot more options for sort of civilian clothing that we used to.
The Hamlet actors are usually really good.
Ah, the Hamlet actors.
Of which, Dragoon, if you haven't had a chance to play my new mission, I did the Hamlet thing with Corin playing Claudius.
We had quite a fun discussion on Twitter about Hamlet. We went on down this crazy tangent, which I'm sure you didn't do in your mission, but of having the player be in the production and having the chance to either, get your lines right or flub them and have the audience react accordingly.
In my case, the player was watching a very, very bad performance.
Remar says he loves the scientist jacket. It's a very useful jacket. I absolutely agree.
Vulcan can riot, right?
Sure. If it's the logical thing to do.
Well, if you use Booleans, don't Booleans, aren't they one of the few Fed races that has unruly as a standard DOF trait?
You know what also is a really good combination for civilian clothes is the long Talaxian skirt with a Kabali top.
Yeah, and some of the beach explorer wear from Ryza is pretty good too.
If
Oh
only
yeah,
could,
shorts and a tank top. Those are good.
if only we could get like the board shorts in. We don't have near enough shorts.
All right, so for the sake of this demonstration, I'm going to just stick with one group.
It's a small riot.
5 people rioting. Okay, so I got the group.
We got
I'm
our
pretty
rioters.
sure I'm going to need multiple versions of this before we're done, but
You might.
let's take this one step at a time.
Yeah, if we were to have one objective, my suggestion would be to have it be a talk to contact, and the objective window, or the objective text will say, "Diffuse the riot and report to so and so."
Okay. Go ahead and set that up real quick.
But one thing that's very important to remember when you are writing a Foundry mission is that you can lie to the player about what the objective actually is.
You certainly can.
Yes.
Well, here's my question before we lay down this objective. In a talk to contact dialogue, can you make buttons appear and disappear based on triggers?
Yes.
Okay. Because that's what we might want at the end, so that the guy you talk to, you can sort of trick it into knowing which option you did. So all that guy you talk to at the end, all he'll say is, "How did it go?" And you'll either have the button that says, "I dropped a bunch of flash bombs on him," or "I had this religious leader defuse it."
Well, what about I shot everybody?
Well, obviously, once you get these first two in there, you could have 3 or 4 different options of what to do. You could beam down extra security teams, and that just makes everybody madder and they attack you. You could drop gas on them, which harms your own people as well and gets you court-martialed.
Okay, so for the sake of this demonstration, which options are we going to go with?
For the sake of this demonstration, we'll just go with the 2 that he mentioned. So talk to the religious leader and get her to do it, or him. Or signal shuttles to fly by and drop flash bombs. No Dragoon, not flash boobs.
It never said that. Okay, so it's pretty rudimentary.
Already,
All right, and so we
there's a
actually
point of
know.
entry.
I'm going to go ahead and put in interact. All right, so how do we want to end? Okay, hypothetically, if they go either way, what do we use as the common objective to
Ending
end the
objective.
Riot?
I think talk to that same security guard again. Might be the good ending objective.
Okay. Well, I don't know if we can have. We have to make whatever our ending objective is inaccessible until they complete all the steps.
Well, you could talk to somebody else and put a.
One thing.
Go ahead, Mark.
Well, one idea that just popped into my head was to have a map dialogue that you need to complete, where it's it's like one of those things that just like pops up just because you're on the map, but you can't actually complete the dialogue until you do one of the optional objective things.
So you're talking about an ops dialogue.
Yeah, that.
One that gives you the ops button. Well, because I think we'll need a beginning objective and an ending objective, and then what we do in the middle is going to be via triggers.
Let's say we've got a leader who's we got to talk to at the end.
Okay.
Got to keep the opening generic.
Sure. People are commenting on the number of test maps you have. This must be your
this is my
random test stuff.
Yeah.
Probably has a lot of the previous tests and demonstrations we've done on this show in this particular mission.
Primar said to make Chausa the religious leader since you put her in and she's already dressed the part.
I can't because I need it to be somebody else not in the mob. All right, and then I get the other one. I hope you listen to the.
We don't have to be particularly complete with our dialogue here. So what you've got is this is our ending objective, and you got two dialogue windows. One which says, "I'm sorry I had to use flash bombs." The other one says, "I hope you listen to the religious leader." The response, and you've got a couple of responses from the riot leader.
This kind of gives a way to acknowledge that a choice was made.
Mm-hmm.
All right, and I'll have to set up the triggers for that a little later.
Yes.
Okay.
Because first you'll need to put down a couple NPCs for those two objectives.
trying to. From there. We're going to put the heater. Let's see. Suggested someone from the hamlet.
How about Hamlet himself?
To be or not to be, that is the question. Wait, which character was that again? Yeah.
Oh yeah, that was Hamlet.
It's been a long time
Yeah,
since I read
that was Hamlet.
I believe I was a senior in high school.
You know, Drogon, some say you went to high school with Shakespeare.
Some do say that.
Of course, there are some people who say that Shakespeare was not the pen name for no one knows how many people.
I don't know that they would be right though. Ooh, we're gonna make Shakespeare the religious leader.
I don't think we're ever going to know who Shakespeare really was. I mean, really.
A guy named William?
But we don't need to know.
Right over here, so it's closer to the temple. Oh, and we need a security guard.
We need a security guard.
There you go, Security Officer Lopez.
By the way, did they check the security officer for goatees?
The security officer does have a beard.
And here I was half expecting it to be a robot that only speaks Spanish.
All right. Now we have some fun trigger stuff to go.
We do.
All right, so obviously the easiest way is to drop the flash bomb.
So you'll need some kind of console from which to contact your ship. Say there's the rioters have disrupted communications, so you have to use a console with a subspace booster on it.
Or you could just do an invisible object. Really big one.
Oh, wow. That would be too simple. Come on.
Also,
okay,
Fancy invisible objects.
if you name the invisible object properly, the default talk to object's name thing will actually make sense in the context of calling your ship.
For some reason I thought we had the what is it, the that communications antenna from of Bajor. I thought we had that in the Foundry as an asset.
I'm not remembering what you're talking about.
The one that's over here in the.
You remember that the console you use while you're trying to hack into the Deep Space Nine communications array?
Wasn't it built of like podiums and something?
Yeah, it was like I'm not actually sure they made a new asset for that.
Yeah, I think it's built of other assets.
I do think it may have had a satellite dish attached to the top of it, though.
Oh well, it's not particularly important.
No, not really. This is the quick and dirty version.
All right, so the fun, tricky part is in order to not have this occur prematurely, we've got to have 2 versions. Actually, technically, we have 3 versions.
Explain why you need 3 versions.
Okay, so the first one exists up until the console is ready to be used. The second one is once the console is active. And the third one, third one is afterwards to prevent misfiring if they say,
So
for
you
instance,
can't-
they do.
So you can't do both objectives.
Yeah.
So once you settle on picking the other objective, this one
So, yeah.
becomes inactive.
Yes.
So you can only talk to the religious leader or hit this console.
All right, so off one, visible immediately, and become invisible. Objective is in progress. Actually, I need to change that.
Of course, getting your objective names right and getting your triggers correct is very important.
Yeah. Well, I don't want to make it obvious that that's the exiting, because otherwise they're going to be trying to talk to the leader before we're ready.
Mm-hmm. And you can always block him off in some way where
I'm going to
you
put
can't
an
talk to
invisible
him.
wall around him of it here. Okay, so you cannot talk to people through invisible walls.
Now you'll have to find a way to get rid of that invisible wall, of course.
Yeah, that can be a little tricky, but
that might be problematic. Well, we'll set up the optional objectives. We'll figure that part out later.
I believe there's a way to do it. Okay, so set the on one appears once the subdue the riot objective is in progress, and disappears on component complete, which isn't set up yet because to make our religious leader.
Oh yeah, we gotta make. Gotta have some dialogue on him.
The religious leader, a few words.
I will help.
Okay, so that. I'm gonna move him right here. Okay, so where were we? On the communications array on.
So you want that interactable communications array to go away if you reach that dialogue with the. Or how are you doing that?
Okay, so if he interacts with the religious leader, or if the player interacts with the religious leader, the communications array that can call in the strike goes away.
Okay.
Does it get replaced by an identical object that only looks the same?
Exactly.
Yes.
So this one is...
Yeah, because I just occurred to me that you didn't mention that particular step because it looks weird when a dialogue makes part of the map disappear and that particular object disappearing doesn't make sense.
Yeah, that's why there are 3 of them there. So you have the initial
Yeah.
one, and then when you do the first objective, you talk to security, he already asks you to help. That despawns the first one, spawns a second one that is interactable. And then if you make the other choice to go talk to the religious leader, the interactable one despawns, and another inactive one spawns.
All right.
Actually, now if you have the objects in the exact same XY coordinates, well, okay, X, Y, and Z, but if you have them at the same coordinates and it's the exact same object, then in theory, at least, you don't need to hide the second object and reveal it. You just need to leave it there and hide the interactable object when the time comes.
You could
Well,
do
I mean,
that.
I like to be able to show that the console is glowing.
You do get it to be glowing that way, or at least you end up with the creepy candle flames. I'm not sure if the little flash effect works properly, but you at least get the glowing candle flames.
Okay, so that is set up, and I've got my flash bomb here.
Mm-hmm.
Going to appear if, component complete, they interact with communications array, specifically the second communications array. One
Make
here
sure
in
you
the
get them
middle.
on the right one.
All right. Let's look at the religious leader.
Now he has to go away or something if you choose the other option.
So he is actually not going to show up. He's going to be mysteriously away up until do the right objective. It should be in progress. And will disappear if you call in the... Actually, just dawned on me we might need something else here.
Primar suggested that having the guy be absent because he's giving a speech. I personally think it would be funny to have the reason why he's not there be due to having a conference with a Tholian ambassador.
Well, I think what you should do for this part is you have the religious leader up there. If you go talk to him, then he says, I'll go help right now. He disappears. A new one spawns down by the rioters.
Yeah.
If you interact with the console instead, an invisible wall pops up so you can't go talk to the religious leader after you've done that. So you put an invisible wall that only pops up if you interact with that console right at the door to the Bajoran temple there.
Trying to recall maybe a way around this. All right, so I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to have the communication array actually bring up a pop-up dialog.
Bombs away.
One of the tricks is you got to be specific with instructions since it's not showing up as objectives. So after the flash bomb, we want to send them to the leader of the riot.
Yes. If you're going to do optional objectives that are outside the objective window, you have to be very good about using the dialogue to tell people what to do. That's what I had to do when I did my big sort of multiple choice episode, which was the Mirror Universe episode over there, where you had to decide whether to blow up a piece of advanced technology that they had, or accept that the Mirror Universe leader was telling you he was going to use it for benevolent purposes and let him have it. So I had to tell you in the dialogue to, even though the objective was get to the end of the map, the pop-up dialogue had to tell you interact with this console or don't.
Well, I mean, it seems obvious, right? If he has a goatee, then he's clearly not trustworthy.
He had mutton chops. Does that work?
Sorry, I'm probably making no sense here.
So you're putting up a dialogue that says he'll go speak with the leader of the riot. And telling the player to speak with the riot leader.
Because in neither scenario, they...
Or have him say, I'll go calm everybody down. And then instructing you to speak with the leader. It's sort of funny because we've unintentionally created a plot line here. The cast and crew of a production of Hamlet is rioting, and we have to go get the writer to calm them down.
Okay, so... So I've got, you may notice I've got two different dialogues going here. One is a default dialogue with the religious leader, and another is a pop-up dialogue. And I'm going to make these two play nice together for a specific reason. That reason is that if I remember correctly, triggers based off of the dialogue prompt reached, at least multiple triggers, tend to act as ors instead of ands. So if any one of them is hit, it'll set it off, and not if both are triggered. So I'm hoping that if I set the walls to drop, hoping I'm remembering this right, otherwise this is going to be not going to work out the way I expected.
Sometimes they don't.
All right, so I'm going to 10-foot walls, really tall. Going to start there initially, and then continue until hopefully.
So hopefully these walls will disappear on either dialog prompt. Is that right?
That is the idea. I'm going to move the religious leader here. A copy of him who's not show up. Billy says, I'll go calm everyone down. Same thing here. Having him disappear on either.
Yeah.
So, in theory, if we go ahead and order the flash bomb, it'll make him disappear, meaning we can't go talk to him.
Mhm.
And if we go talk to him, he'll disappear and appear over here.
Well, I'd say we're at the testing point.
Check my I hooked up everything. Okay, I think so.
You have other issues in this mission that would prevent you from publishing, but probably not on this map.
Yep. Sorry.
So now the
Still think-
moment of truth. Did it all work? Do the loading dance. Alt-tab and look at Twitter. Look at the forums. Look at Reddit. Look at the weather.
They post patch notes yet?
Good question. Don't imagine a lot of significant patch notes for tomorrow. I mean, other than the...
Sometimes they surprise us, and you have these bugs that people have been clamoring about for years just suddenly get patched one day, and they're like, oh yeah, by the way, we fixed this.
True. How is it they're doing release notes now? I forget where they post
There's
those.
a section.
Because they're not updating the release notes section of the forum.
Put it under guides. Then patch notes.
The last time, what happened was there's a blog posted to the ARC website, and then Trendy makes a post with a link to the blog.
Oh, there's some things that at least my platform came up the right height. Okay, so I made some mistakes. This guy is not hooked up to anything.
Well, see, that's why we test.
Fortunately, I think my dialogue trees aren't working either.
All right, no patch notes yet.
So, how about that sports team?
Yes, that's sports ball.
Hey, I'm probably the only one here who can talk intelligently about a sport, anyway. So the rest of you are probably not into sports.
I occasionally pay attention to the Bears simply because I had an uncle who liked Chicago.
I used to live in Chicago.
I used to watch Saturday Night Live when they did that sketch about the Bears. Like with Chris Farley and all those guys. So, Dragoon, what did you do wrong?
Well, I think the second religious leader, I forgot to change his triggers.
He was set to always spawn.
I didn't. All right.
All right. So, talk to the first guy. And this time you're doing the explosion. And they tell you bombs away.
I've noticed a new bug in Stow that even after a object stops becoming interactive, it still glows. Does that weird glow?
Really?
And it's not just in the Foundry. It's been doing this throughout the game.
Is that? Oh, yeah. I do see it.
That's actually something I noted when I played that mission. It's because he had this one thing where you have an interact with object thing, which was, in his case, an entire building. The creepy candle flames disappear, but the little yellow spinning or scanning line thing kept going.
Okay.
So the walls did not disappear. However, you
No,
can
I'm
talk to the riot leader.
So yeah, I'm guessing if I talk to the riot leader or the religious leader,
So can you go see the religious leader?
so yeah, my invisible walls disappear. So it is doing an and, not an or.
It's an and, not an or. That's useful information.
No, I remember there was a weird, glitchy scenario in which, but I guess that wasn't it. It was something else.
Mm-hmm. Well, I would put the ending objective maybe off somewhere else on the map rather than have it near the action. But did our other trigger work? Is the question.
Yeah, I mean, other than our balls not dropping until after.
Mm-hmm. And probably our guy doesn't disappear either. The first religious leader doesn't disappear if you interact with the console.
No, he doesn't, because he's having the same problem. Oh, that's the question: is how would I get around that?
But yeah.
And you got that sound of we're running out of time.
We are actually, because we started a little bit late and we're hitting the. But that's sort of the basics of trying to make couple of interacts sort of mutually exclusive. And obviously there are some more things that we would need to do to tweak this so that it would all work. But that's kind of the basics. So I think that's a good place to stop for the evening.
Okay, and who knows? I might revisit.
Yeah.
Once I
you can
figure out how to
report.
do
You
it.
can report back to us next time with a properly working version.
Okay.
So if you want to put up our contact info.
All right. You can email us at foundryroundtable@live.com. We are also on Twitter at Foundry Roundtab, where we post our news about the show, when we go live, when we post to YouTube, all that good stuff. Drogan can be reached at Drogan1701. Mark can be reached at Markhawkman, and I can be reached at Greendragoon. Boulevard?
And our guest, SirBoulevard.
And I can be reached on Twitter at SirBoulevard.
All right. Well, we will say good night.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.